Okay, so let's continue. I'm just going to delete this merge. A couple of things I want to do these attribute randomizers is come into the seed and just drop a $FF so they will change every frame, every simulation frame. So I'm going to put that in there, and the seed here the same. Okay, and for this last one as well. Cool. And then yeah, I want to strip everything up here. So I'm going to delete the names and everything we got on here, because we're copying them. You know, we don't want to duplicate. We don't want duplicate names, so we just delete it at this point. We can delete the variant. We don't need that. We want to keep the angular velocity. Delete the name and the path. We don't need that. Okay, and then drop another assemble here. We're not going to, it's already packed geometry, but we just want to create this, the name attribute. Okay, this will be on the, this generates a name attribute on the primitives. It's because we're not actually making anything here. Let's see, am I not? There we go. So we should have some attributes. There we go. So yeah, we'll have the name attributes on the primitives. So I just need to promote that up to the points. Okay, you need the name attributes on the points for in a bullet simulation. From primitive to point, name. Okay, so now we have the name here, which is great. One more thing I want to do in terms of the attributes here is just give it a little bit more velocity than they have. Okay, so as the debris is really small pieces, you'd expect them to go faster, basically, than oh, sorry, what am I doing? Vel mult. You'd expect these pieces to travel faster than the bigger pieces, right? They'd be affected by the explosion more, right? So I'm just going to multiply v mult, we'll call it v mult. If you notice that, yeah, sometimes to write these strings, you can use kind of an apostrophe like that, or the speech mark. You can use either, it doesn't matter, as long as you use both, you know, the same on either side. So yeah, I just want to multiply this velocity. If I click that, now I get this handy slider, but I'm just going to push it up to 3. Great. Okay, so if you go, I know that this will generate a float, but it will multiply each component of the vector equally. So if I turn that off and on, you can see the values jumping up there. Okay, so that's great. So that can go into our sim. So let's go back to the first frame. I'm going to drop another bullet solver. Okay, and so in this case we don't have proxy geometry because it's so small. It's not really necessary. Not too worried about, you know, the collisions there. So click that into connect that up to the first input. So yeah, we're going to be emitting these. Okay, so we're going to have points. We're going to have new geometry every frame for, you know, that we otherwise this will just generate the geometry on the, if we have this turned off, we'll have the geometry generated on the first frame, and then after that we won't get anything new. So we need to turn on this emit RBDs and grab a switch. Okay, so just like we did with the bombs, so that we turn to a way to turn off this kind of emission. I'm just going to do $FF is more than 5, so it will emit for 5 frames basically. Okay, so you can see that's off there with the dotted line, and then when I go to frame 6, it switches over to here, and we won't be emitting anymore. So that's good for that. Let's see. So just like before, we need a I'm going to drop the timescale back to 0.5. Yeah, we're emitting the, I want to ground the same ground as before, so it was -2. Okay. What else? And the forces, we want the gravity to be -15, just like the other simulation. You could set up some kind of links between the two solvers if you like. I'm not going to bother here. I don't think I think we should be fine without it. Cool. And then I also want to have a drag, just like before. Pop drag. Okay, I'm going to turn off the ignore mass and set this to 0.1, just like the other simulation. Cool. So what we also need is these pieces colliding. Okay, so we can take this as it is, just connect it right into the collision geometry. Just going to press Alt and click on that to tidy this up a little bit. Now, if I select that kind of elbow node thing I made, go to the geometry spreadsheet, and let's see, if we move forward a bit to actually get some points. I want to see the what I've got on the attributes. Oh, that's trying to simulate. Yeah, so let's drop I'm going to drop a null here actually, because it's visualizing down there. Press escape. Visualize the null. There we go. So we got all these kind of attributes, and one that could cause us problems is this active attribute. Okay, because that's going to make it's going to make Bullet believe that this needs to be simulated, but I don't want it to be simulated. I want it to be just a kind of animated static object. So yeah, you're basically the message is when you're taking geometry from one simulation and passing it into another, and be careful with the attributes that are on there. The rest should be fine. It won't affect it. But that active attribute, I'm going to delete that. Attribute delete. Okay, and then on the point there's active. Okay, I'm just going to delete that out as it is. And then obviously, yeah, we want the floor as well. So let's grab an object merge and grab that collision geometry that we made earlier on in the main RBD out collider. Grab that. Okay, so this thing here, and just in case some of these kind of spikes are sticking out, I don't want the debris to fall on these, so I'm just going to delete that grid. Okay, just make that selection there. Oh, I made 2 deletes there, it's not necessary, just with the blast is fine. Cool, and then merge these together. That's in there, I can get rid of that now. And this null, let's put, this was, what am I deleting here? The active. Delete active, blast, put floor. And you can see what that's doing. So that's great. We've got a collider. I'm just going to turn this off so that, you know, while we're visualizing it, doesn't try to simulate. Cool. So I think that's it. The collisions will have convex hull, animated static. That's what we have. I think that should be good to go. So I'll turn that back off. Okay, and then we'll want to cast this out. So ABD IO, connect that up. Actually, in this case, we just want the pieces. Okay, we don't have any constraints. We don't have any proxy geometry. We could work with the simulation points, but you know the sims are pretty light, so we don't need to bother with that. So let's come in here, turn on load from disk before we forget to do it later. Where we want 100 frames. I'll save this into my geo folder, that's fine, or maybe into the sim folder would be better. And let's call this debris RBD $OS I don't want. Well, let's make a folder, debris RBD, oops, and another one, debris RBD, and dot $f3 .0. And there we go. So that's good to go. Shouldn't take too long to simulate, but we'll save those 100 frames out. So I've just watching this flipbook. It's not the entire same, just 64 frames, but I'm just looking at the scale, and I think I want to bring down the size of the debris a bit more. Still, some of these, you know, they're really big, like pretty much as big as the original pieces, which is not really the idea with the debris. So I'm going to bring that down a bit. Other than that, you know, it looks fine. We see the collisions working. They are, you know, the speed, they're kind of going a little bit faster, just ahead of the rest of the simulation, and you know, they're spinning and everything, and that looks good. So let me just get rid of that. Go back to the first frame. And I'm actually visualizing the simulation now. So I'm going to come back up to this copy to points and go to a later frame, and then just drop down this, well, work on this P scale a bit more. So let's try, what do we have? We've got 0.05 there, 0.3. I'm going to drop this down to like 0.1. Maybe that looks good, and then push this up to maybe a 0.9. Oops, 0.9, something like that. There we go. That looks more like the scale, the kind of scale I want. And then again, we could just kind of, let me think, merge it. Oh, not measure. Merge with the original geometry just to get a sense of the size. Okay, so when I zoom in, if I cut that, you can just see it's kind of a subtle layer on top. Now there'll be more, you know, because we're adding more every frame. We're adding, you know, roughly 10,000 pieces every frame, and that'll build up. So great. So let's go back to the first frame, back into our ABD.io, and save that to disk.